She wanted to meet someone during a night out, and when she was unsuccessful, decided to go home to the migrant center with two Afghan men. Yeah, not a great decision there. She met the two unaccompanied refugees from Afghanistan outside a pub and decided to accompany them back to their asylum center in Lungby. The woman, who again is a member of an anti-deportation group, told police, quote, "I've never been afraid or worried about people from other countries, and I thought it was quite interesting to talk with them." Well, talk with them, don't go home with them. Absolutely incredible. So again, she made this decision based on her own misleading virtue signaling lifestyle. This is a woman who's pro-refugee. She's probably gone out and campaigned with those refugee welcome signs.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
We're back. This is the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. We were talking about the situation in Europe. And you know what's a shame about this is that there are groups of migrants who do integrate into European countries. And in many cases, those groups are treated more harshly than the ones causing the problems. We saw this with the whole Windrush controversy in the UK, with the Caribbean migrants being mistreated, being deported in some cases when they had a right to remain. We've seen hardworking, business-owning Syrian migrants in Sweden being punished by the government because they missed some technicality on their immigration visa. Meanwhile, they're letting ISIS jihadists back into the country, giving them welfare, and treating the migrants who caused the problems with kid gloves. And this is a situation that's arisen in Sweden once again with this story. Swedish woman who accompanied two Afghans to prove that xenophobes are wrong, dark humor there, is raped and abused. So the middle-aged Swedish woman was raped and abused by two Afghan asylum seekers in their asylum accommodation. The woman, who was a member of a Facebook group against migrant deportation, so this was a pro-refugee campaigner, tried to prove that xenophobes are wrong about the fact that Afghans are dangerous. This is how she tried to prove it. She wanted to meet someone during a night out, and when she was unsuccessful, decided to go home to the migrant center with two Afghan men. Yeah, not a great decision there. She met the two unaccompanied refugees from Afghanistan outside a pub and decided to accompany them back to their asylum center in Lungby. The woman, who again is a member of an anti-deportation group, told police, quote, "I've never been afraid or worried about people from other countries, and I thought it was quite interesting to talk with them." Well, talk with them, don't go home with them. Absolutely incredible. So again, she made this decision based on her own misleading virtue signaling lifestyle. This is a woman who's pro-refugee. She's probably gone out and campaigned with those refugee welcome signs. She's gone home with two Afghan men and thought that wouldn't be a problem because the xenophobes must be wrong and I'm going to prove them wrong. When they arrived at the men's room in the asylum accommodation, things changed rapidly. They drank alcohol and one of the men started touching her, even though she told him she didn't want him to, and against her repeated protests. Again, Afghanistan is a country where they literally have something called bacha bazi, where old men get to have sex with children, and it's just part of their culture. Google it. If you don't believe me, Google it. The US Army tried to blow the whistle on it. Some members of the US military, they were told to shut up. That was in the New York Times. Some cultures are better than others. But no, let's just go home with them alone. Later, one of the men called Anwar raped her vaginally and anally while the other masturbated next to her. It was a very painful experience. After getting away, the woman called the police. And listen to what happened to the perpetrators. Anwar, the lead culprit, was convicted of rape. His sentence was 1 year and 3 months in prison. 15 months in prison for this obscene, disgusting rape. And he's not going to be deported. He'll pay 13,000 euros in damages to the woman. Fardin, who was the other culprit, is sentenced for sexual abuse. He will pay 2,300 euros in damages to the victim. The prosecutor never asked for Fardin to be expelled. So one of them literally, it doesn't say if he's got any prison time, but it says it's a 2,300 euro fine for raping a woman. Absolutely insane. This is Sweden. What do you expect? Another headline here out of Breitbart, 1 in 3 North Africans want to migrate permanently, number rising. Now, you remember last week we talked about President Macron, who is visiting with Trump today, obviously, talking about the overall plan, the ultimate plan for Eurabia, which is to invite in 200 million Africans. Now, if you invite Africa into Europe, guess what happens? Europe becomes Africa. The proportion of North Africans who want to permanently migrate has reached a record high, with almost half of young people wanting to move country if they get a chance. No surprise. I mean, if I lived in some of these countries, I would want to leave them. But that doesn't mean you can just invite them all in without any consequences. Just under 1 in 3, 32% of 5,000 North African respondents to the Gallup World Poll for 2017 said they would like to move abroad, a figure up from 28% the previous year. The desire to migrate was found to be strongest among younger North Africans, with a proportion of 15 to 29-year-olds jumping from 40% in 2016 to 46% the following year. And that is, of course, because Europe has, to a great extent, rolled out the red carpet. Almost a third, 30% of people in the 30 to 49 age bracket said they would like to permanently migrate, rising from 24% of those interviewed in 2016, which surveyed people living in Algeria, Egypt, Libya, where they literally have the street slave markets, Morocco, and Tunisia. The most desired destination for North Africans who said they would like to migrate permanently was France, which is a bountiful, joyous, pleasant land of cultural enrichment right now, with the number who named the EU country rising to 19% from 13% the previous year. And of course, now Macron is saying, come on in, 200 million Africans, what could possibly go wrong? Also out of Breitbart, EU to cut funds to patriotic nations allocate cash on values basis, including accepting mass migration. So again, we've had the Visegrad countries, Hungary, Poland, Austria to some extent, rebelling against EU migrant quotas. They don't want migrants settled in their country, and now they're going to be punished by the democratic, freedom-loving European Union. Remember, Macron literally said that Hungary was the authoritarian system and not the EU. They literally ignore the results of referendums and votes. That sounds pretty authoritarian to me. It says Brussels is set to divert tens of billions of euros in EU cash away from patriotic eastern and central states under budget reform plans that would link funding to the bloc's values, which include mass migration. According to proposals seen by the FT, the European Commission is planning to shift the criteria for distributing cohesion programme funds away from GDP per capita towards so-called EU values, which means the 350 billion euro funding pot aimed at developing the bloc's weaker economies in the bloc appears under a new title of cohesion and values. So it's going to shift to a system in which the allocation of funds will be based on much broader criteria, including migration, environmental policy, and youth unemployment. So they're going to take away the money from those Eastern European countries as a punishment because they don't want their culture to be subsumed by another culture, and they're going to give it to the countries that are obeying. Again, another authoritarian facet of the European Union coming to the fore once again. Continues, top Brussels figures have repeatedly insisted that importing huge numbers of third world migrants must be a core feature of belonging to the bloc. You remember in Germany, we had the clip of the Green Party leader, I think Stephanie von Berg is her name, getting up in front of Parliament and openly bragging that Germans will be a minority in major cities by 2020 and saying that that's a good thing. That was literally her quote. We've got Sweden, where ethnic Swedes will be a minority in their country within our lifetimes, not just in the major cities, but the country as a whole. And Germany, by 2060 or before, Germans will be a minority in Germany. You get to that stage and it's no longer Germany, okay? The people make the place. The article continues, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron have both previously suggested the distribution of EU funds should be linked to the number of asylum seekers. Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker declared last year the Union will be lost without huge population transfer from Africa to Europe during an interview in which he hinted there are plans for the two continents to merge. Now, of course, this is based on the fundamental lie that Europe needs a labour force to work to pay taxes. But then you look at the figures for the newly arrived migrants, the ones who are on welfare, it's 85%. In some cases, it's over 90%. So they're not working. They're not contributing to the economy. They're not paying taxes. We're paying for them. So how on earth is that going to solve the labour shortage, which is driven by the native populations not having children. It's not, because they don't work. The figures show it. The vast majority of these migrants are on welfare. They're sucking off the state. So that argument that we need to import Africa because we're dying out, because we're not having children, so we're not going to be able to fund social programs and pensions, it just doesn't wash. It's complete fake news. We'll be back. This is the Alex Jones Show, live breaking news at Infowars.com. Don't go away.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
So we have even right there.
What's his name?
This is an emergency transmission from FEMA Region 6 in occupied North America.
There is a war. It's happening now. It will decide the fate of humanity. The time to choose sides has come. We are the resistance. We are the InfoWar.
One of the things I'm really proud of is the fact that doing my own research and talking to top scientists, we knew that there was an iodine conspiracy.
Iodine is in every cell of your body.
Iodine deficiency is the commonest preventable cause of brain damage and loss of IQ in the world.
In fact, over 90% of Americans are low in iodine.
Iodine used to be used in bread as a dough enhancer. Then in the early 1970s, most commercial manufacturers switched to bromide instead.
Since 1970, the iodine they collected in urine is 50% less now than it was then.
Research from a World Health Organization study show that 10 to 50% of people worldwide are deficient in iodine.
Most people, I think everybody, for the most part, should be supplementing with iodine.
And I am so proud of the fact that since I've been promoting iodine the last 5-6 years, it is now all the rage at health food stores, you name it. But none of them are as pure or as clean as the original Survival Shield X2 at InfoWarsLife.com. I was just about to walk out of the studio to pick my children up, and I got some bad news. For the second time in the 5.5-year history of Survival Shield X2, our flagship product, we are having supply chain problems, and this may be the last batch of this. You see, we have to go through the DEA to get this because it is pure atomic iodine. Everything else out there is bound or it's contaminated. It's not absorbable. It's toxic. We have deep earth crystal source that's so pure that it actually turns into purple gas in the atmosphere, and it's injected into palm oil, organic palm oil, in a proprietary patented process. And so in our own search to get the purest form, we discovered that oil companies and gas drilling companies had a byproduct that they were selling to pharmaceutical companies and also drug makers that they use to make drugs. That's why the FDA is involved, and that's why the DEA is involved. So it's a major industrial product being used, and that we could actually bring it to the public pure. But you've got to get contracts with oil companies and gas companies to do it. And once they figure out there's a market, they start jacking up the price. So we have a run of this, a limited run. We have a good supply right now. We're talking maybe 2 months of it. But this may be the clincher. We may not have X2 in this configuration in the future. But we're offering it still 25% off until it sells out. Hopefully, just like the last time this happened a few years ago, it's not an issue and we do get more. But right now, we are not able to secure the crystals that produce the purest iodine from our own research and the test in the world. Survival Shield X2 at InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. And you've got to experience what having the good halogen in your body does. Most folks in about 3 weeks go through a detoxification process, but what it does just for stamina, libido, focus, energy is really amazing. And if you don't have true iodine, pure iodine, you will end up having all sorts of disorders, just like water, just like oxygen. Without iodine, it is an essential element. It's available exclusively. Survival Shield X2 at InfoWarsLife.com and InfoWarsStore.com. And I hope, like a few years ago, that we can work this out. It's just right now we're kind of over a barrel, so I want listeners and viewers and everybody to know this stuff has a very, very long shelf life. I personally have stockpiled it, and your purchases fund the operation fighting for free speech, the Second Amendment, national sovereignty. So it is a true 360 win. Again, the term I coined. or what they said before, a non-zero sum game. So get your Survival Shield X2 today, along with other great products, at InfoWarsLife.com, and fund the tip of the spear in the fight for free speech and human dignity worldwide. This could potentially be the end of Survival Shield X2 as we know it. If you love the original like I do and thousands of others have, it's available now for a limited time at InfoWarsStore.com.